explosion of the human population is one of the most amazing, extraordinary stories of our time. In 1800, there were about 1 billion people on the earth. When I was born in 1940, that had jumped to 2.5 billion, 2.5 times in 140 years. But now it's coming close to 7.5 billion, which is triple what it was when I was born. So the population is tripling in one lifetime. That expansion of humanity to fill every part of the earth and make use of everything we can get our hands on is basic to all the global problems. So let's ask ourselves why. Why is there this huge increase in population? It's actually a great success story, because in populations throughout time, the traditional peoples, a few hundred years ago all around the world, there were many children born into each family, but around about half of them died without reaching adulthood, at least a half. Life expectancy was 20-25 years at birth for most people across the world. So with lots of youngsters, the population stayed around about stable. Then came the advances of peace and security. Don't forget that, that's quite significant. Then healthcare and sanitation. And what happened was that youngsters, children survived. They survived to grow up, to have children, and if the average family had 4, 5, 6 children, out of 6, 4 of them would have grown up to breed, and they would have another 6, 4 of them growing up to breed, and every 30 years you've got a doubling of population. So that is the reason why we have this population explosion, and remember that it's a successful development. When you evolve eventually to a stable population, that would demand that each couple have on average 2.1 children. You're just replacing yourself, and the children you have grow up and they replace themselves. It's around about that 2 per couple, and this creates a older population. Remember, don't lose sight of the fact that this is successful. This is what we want. We want to go on living, but we don't want to ruin everything. So what happens then is you have fewer young people and more old people, and alarms have been raised. What about the ageing population? Ye gods, who's going to look after them? You can do the arithmetic. I remember doing it in a couple of hours back in the 1970s. It's very easy to do the arithmetic. When a population goes from a youthful growing one to a stable old one, you're actually exchanging lots of young dependents who all demand new schools, new suburbs to grow up in, and new jobs, and all sorts of infrastructure and facilities. A lot of work is involved in a growing population with all these youngsters to an old population, and the fear is raised that you have to look after the old people. Well, first of all, most old people want to work, can work, are very useful, and also have a look around you. We have high unemployment. There's tons of people there to be employed if only we organise ourselves correctly. Well, how many people do you think we should have if we've grown from this 1 billion to 2.5 to 7.5? What's a decent number to have? A first thought is, if we want to be sustainable and in balance with nature, we have to be well below that 1 billion. Remember that before 1800, whole environments had been wiped out, changed across Europe, across China, across so many parts of the world. So to live in balance with other parts of nature, which I think is important. I think it's important, all the life on Earth. to live in balance, we must bring the number well under that billion. Now, secondly, suppose we're going to ignore that and we just say we all want to live at a good standard of living, and there's been a lot of research into that. We know the answer to that question. It would take 2 or 3 planets to keep everybody of the present 7.5 billion at a high Western developed standard of living. So you've got to bring it down to about 2 billion. This Earth can support about 2 billion people, but we're at 7.5. The worries are that there'll be some collapse when the number hits 8 or 9 billion. It's not sustainable. The question that has been asked in the global models that I have talked about in the previous wee chat have looked at how many people can you pack into the Earth before the whole thing collapses. Collapse. This is not good life. This is squeezing everybody in, and the answer is 8 or 9 billion. And since we're in New Zealand, we could relate those numbers to ourselves. By the time the Maori population hit around 100,000, they wiped out the moa, the giant eagle, changed the environment. So if we want to be in correct relationship with the environment, in balance with the environment, then we want to be down under the billion. Now, if we want to all live at a good standard of living, and remember that this could involve having a nice garden and a nice place to live, everybody, and so on, not packing ourselves into little boxes on the hillside, about 2 million. The maximum we could fit in, who knows, could be 9 or 10 million, but I think by the time we hit that number, we're in big trouble. So what are the policies we should have? Well, if we want a good life, if we want to live in balance with nature, we've got to reduce our population. And there's 2 policies to bring in. One is ask everybody to have small families. Explain why. And I think that will work. It certainly has in other countries around the world where birth rates have dropped below replacement. Secondly, cut immigration. Don't keep piling people in. And there we hit a very, very great problem, which is we are a lifeboat nation. We're a place people will want to go to when other parts of the world are in deep trouble. And how many refugees can we take? I think I'll just touch on that here, and we have to go into it more deeply later because it's a very serious problem, and don't try and dodge it. It's triage. We can take in a few and look after them. If we take in too many, we'll destroy our whole country. We'll destroy ourselves. Thank you.